The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Kerry Mannon and I'm your host today. This is the Welcome to Islam show. Today we are going live in the studio of Inspire FM. I just want to recap what the purpose of this show is. So this is the Welcome to Islam show. So this is a platform for new Muslims, and it's a way for us to basically be heard and get to know the community, and for the community to get to know us, and for the community to understand as well some of the needs and challenges of new Muslims here in Luton. So I actually have some guests as well here. So there's the three of us today in the studio. So I'd just like to say Assalamu alaikum to Catherine.
Alaikum salam.
And Assalamu alaikum to Jeanette.
Alaikum salam.
So we are actually three members of the committee of the Luton Revert Group. So for those of you who have been tuning in regularly, you'll be getting used to hearing our voices. We always do the Welcome to Islam show on the last Sunday of the month. And so the Luton Revert Group was established coming up for about 2 years ago now, just because it was identified that within Luton there are obviously a number of new Muslims, and there's a lot of social challenges that new Muslims face, and we just formed a community effectively of new Muslims. So we're run by new Muslims, and we're here to support new Muslims. It's a safe space to encourage guidance, friendship and learning. And we usually meet once a month on the first Saturday of every month. And like I said, we've been running for about 2 years now, and alhamdulillah, it's going from strength to strength. So today's topic for today's show is about being British Muslims, and basically identifying the difference between culture and Islamic practices. So this is obviously quite a wide topic. There's a couple of reasons we chose this topic, because our next meeting we're actually having an author who's written a very interesting book about being British Muslim, and he's going to be coming to our next meeting and doing a talk and a Q&A session. But also it feels a little bit topical at the moment in terms of a recent article that was published about Scotland actually introducing for their residents, the British Muslim residents, a tartan. So we just thought that was quite topical, so we thought that leaded on to today's topic. So ladies, first of all, let's kind of discuss our experience of what it means to be a British Muslim in terms of from a new Muslim perspective. Catherine.
So I became Muslim more than 30 years ago, and I was actually not in Britain at the time. I was in Germany, and very quickly I was imagining there'd be one Muslim way of being, and we would all get along and understand each other fine. That was not my experience, because I had this sense of, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? Who can I connect with? Who will understand my way of thinking, or the way I behave, or the way I do things? And it took some while until I found people, Muslims, where I could be myself. That was my experience 30 years ago, and it's been quite a journey. I remember I felt quite a lot of anger at the beginning when I came across these barriers to being who I wanted to be as a Muslim, or what I thought being a Muslim was. But it's been a journey.
For me it was, it's nearly 30 years now since I became Muslim, and it was a very different time back then. And I remember I was determined to do everything right, like you are when you become a Muslim to begin with. And I started wearing my hijab like 4 weeks after I became Muslim, which is not really common.
No.
But it's like, I remember walking down the street. I mean, obviously, I'm not from Ruton, this was up in North, but I remember walking down the street and feeling the looks and this alienation from both Muslims and non-Muslims. It's like the non-Muslims are like, what are you doing, lass? What are you wearing? And the Muslims, it was like, what are you doing? You're not one of us. It was really different then, and I struggled to find where I fit. And yeah, it took me many years really to be who I wanted to be. Because when you first become Muslim, you desperately want to keep your old life to a point, but naturally people disappear because you're not doing the same things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want to start being part of this new community. And I, like
Yes.
Catherine, I was shocked. I thought, gosh, afterwards I realised how naive I was, that everybody was different, not all as welcoming. They didn't all have this one big love of Islam. It was very different.
And do you think that now that we've obviously got a lot more new Muslims in society, it's becoming more of a regular thing to come across new Muslims, hence why we have, a new Muslim support group here in Luton. Do you think that's kind of like helping us in a way to kind of feel a bit more confident in our own skins and our own identity?
Personally, I think because we've gone through that,
Yes.
we now know and understand that they're all going to go through a journey.
Yeah.
But I think, it's definitely much easier now. It's more seen, it's more common to see a Muslim that's not necessarily of brown skin. Because that's another thing, As a teacher, children used to say to me, "Are you really a Muslim?" Well, yeah, but you're white. I know, but it's possible.
Yeah, and I've even had that from my own children. They've kind of like quizzed me about the fact that, well, how come you're Muslim, Mum, because you're not brown?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, whoa, how did we skip this one? How did that get missed somewhere along the line?
Yeah.
So,
I think everybody has that journey. It's a sort of a transition from one world into another world that is actually, it's not the world of, we all make our own worlds, I think.
Yeah.
One way of being, and we when we first become Muslim, we want to very much be embraced and go into this beautiful new world we read about and heard about, but it's not really there. So over time, we find the knowledge or confidence or support to make our own way through and find our own way of being that fits with who we are, the values that we've come from. And how that can positively contribute to our being a Muslim as well.
So how does that translate in terms of, kind of trying to fit in and your own identity?
I think for me at the beginning it was a lot of heartache, trying to be what I'd read about, but then marrying into a different culture as well, because it wasn't necessarily the Islam that I thought. Everybody had the same Islam, and realising that I had a lot of difficulties to even dress, language, that I felt that I have to try and do, but I couldn't do. It was difficult.
In my experience, when I became Muslim, I was living in Germany, and I met my husband. He was a French revert of 15 years, and he was very much, Islam is for the Europeans as well. He had a very strong sense of his European identity, and I hooked into that. I appreciated that, and so my first sort of years of being a Muslim, it was about trying to find a European Muslim identity, which was an interesting journey. But of course, our contacts were from all parts of the Muslim world, including other reverts, but the Turks and Arabs and Asian. But I never felt from any pressure to dress in a Arab way, Turkish way, although some of the dresses and costumes were beautiful. But I never felt any pressure to dress a certain way.
And I think that's probably because, like you said, your husband was already quite established in his own faith.
Yes.
I think I know for myself, now that having taken Shahada about 14 years ago, I've kind of got to the point now where I actually feel a bit more confident to kind of actually put my foot down and say no to certain cultural things. Whereas when I was first, because I got married quite soon after I took Shahada, so I didn't have the knowledge or the confidence, I kind of found myself in a situation where I was thrown into a world of new culture as well as new religion. And I think actually in some ways culture was pushed on me more than Islam was. You know, I'm kind of like, you know, as I've said many times on this show before, you know, it took me a long time to establish prayer because I was so scared about Arabic and I was kind of so confused about the different messages I was getting about how to pray and whatever. But actually already culturally I was kind of being put into like, you know, well, you need to dress like, you know, a certain way. And, you know, like Eid Day, you know, I mean, one of my wedding gifts was saris, you know, and on Eid Day I was expected to wear, you know, traditional dress from the Bengali culture of my in-laws. And I didn't feel comfortable. It just was so strange to me to do that. And actually, and I got to a point where after a few years I started to resent it. I was like starting to feel like, why are you telling me what to wear? Actually, I'm a grown woman and you're telling me what to wear. And it doesn't suit me because I'm so much taller than your average Bengali person. I can't buy, you know, anything off the shelf. And, you know, I really struggled with that. Whereas now I kind of am at the point in my confidence where actually I'm like, I almost purposely dress English style to make kind of, in a way, defiantly to say, actually, this is my identity, you know, and I try to stay within the confines of, you know, hijab etiquette, but I do it my way, and I'm kind of almost a little bit adamant about it now. I go to the mosque, you know, apart from the fact that obviously I have that in the back of my mind about wearing your best outfit for mosque, but I try to like think, you know, my first inclination is actually I'm going to stay in my English clothes.
Well, I always wear, that's the only clothes I have. I think yes, I've only got English. So I've never had any in-laws who are Muslim. For example, I know that the getting on with your in-laws is so important, and I've never had that sort of challenge. I've had other challenges, but not that as something. So I've been able to find my own way really through various ways, and it's over the years.
I think it's part of a journey. I think I've gone through similar as Kerry. It's just been a case of, you know, I just wanted to make everybody like me and fit into this Muslim way. And it wasn't until somebody said to me, actually, that's Asian, it's not actually Islamic. And I was like, what? Really? And then it was after a few years, like Kerry was like, well, hold on a minute, I'm not doing anything wrong. This is fine. And I had to start being a bit, not bullshit, but like, you know what, I'm wearing what I'm wearing. You tell me where it says it's wrong to wear it. But then, you know, I was looked kind of differently then. I was a bit like, you know, who does she think she is, the queen bee and all
And I think for women it is a particular, because women are, when we're wearing our hijab, we're much more noticeable and visible as Muslims, whereas for brothers who revert,
unless they grow a beard, then they can get away with.
But this day and age, it's fashion to have a beard as well.
Yes.
They can just slip in nicely either way. And so there is different challenges for both women and men. That's some of that. And I think for us, we need to let those new Muslims out there, even some of the young born Muslims here, that you are all right to be whoever you are. You know, obviously there's boundaries to a point of, you know, you can't go drinking and, you know, and all these kind of things, but dress how you are as long as you've got your manners.
you always get that, I hate to be derogatory about the community around us, but you do get that comment quite a lot about don't dress like the kafir. You know, and then you're just like, oh gosh, what does that actually mean?
It's quite,
it's
really poor terminology, but it is used so often.
But it is, as long as it's modest.
And that's the thing.
You know, English dress is modest also. And until, I don't know, 100 years ago, English ladies will wear bonnets and hats and all sorts covering
Well,
their head.
I think in the 60s they still wore the scarves.
Yes.
Yeah, and I now can, having a little bit of knowledge, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but just having grown in confidence, I will now kind of say, well, actually, if you look at how our prophet behaved, when he was invited, to other people's towns, or he went visiting, they would often gift him clothes, and he would wear them.
Yes.
So he was wearing the clothes of the areas that he was visiting, and so therefore to me it's like, well, were they kafir? So therefore I don't I
think the thing that was pointed out to me was, don't lose your own identity, don't lose your culture. Obviously things that go against Islam, you give that up, kind of thing.
Yes.
But you don't become something else. You are still who you are.
Because there's so many positives, and moving away from how we dress, what we eat, fish and chips, and and
halal fish and chips.
and things that are in the British culture.
Yeah.
We were trying to think of, about, there's so much good in British culture and way of being that is Islamic. The welfare state, for example.
It's true. I mean, even I know it's moving away now, but traditionally, looking after your family, everybody getting together on a Sunday for Sunday dinner. Everybody come to mum's house or grandma's house or whatever and have that meal together. I mean, I still did that. I mean, when I lived up north, my dad had come to my house on a Sunday. And I know it all linked really to church and things like this, but for me, it was more of a case of actually family getting
together. It links
together.
to family. I think families all over the world will meet together, eat together.
Exactly.
And communities the same. It's sharing food, and sharing food that is of the land where you are.
That's true. And it doesn't mean that you have to start eating curries or Arab rice or all these different foods around the world. I mean, we are blessed in the times that we're living now in that we can. But you go back so many years, you wouldn't have seen half the ingredients you see now in a shop. You just ate what was there. Your meat and 2 veg.
And the curry came out of a dry packet of Vesta curry.
Well,
that was my first experience.
But do you think, though, here in Luton, because we do have such a large Muslim community, there is kind of a template of what a Muslim looks like, where they come from, and so you do you feel the pressure to kind of fit into that?
I think there is in people's heads a template of what a Muslim looks like, and that will be different for different people. For me, what a Muslim looks like is different from what somebody else might. I don't know.
I think when I first moved to Luton, I couldn't get over how much black clothes there were and young girls, and I just thought, no, this doesn't feel right. It didn't feel comfortable. But it was almost like a fashion as well. They all, I mean, up north there was the hijab changing, and suddenly the girls had really big heads because all these layers and whatever they had under the hijab. I thought, well, no, that's not what it's meant to be either. That was just, it was really strange. But I do think in Luton there was definitely, I think it's changing. But when I first moved down here 6 years ago, it was predominantly black and wearing abayas or jilbabs, whatever they call them, and wearing the full niqab. The number of reverts when I first moved here was wearing black head to toe, and I thought, why?
Yeah.
And they believe that that's the right way, but I thought, but that's not here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's alienating here.
Because there is this perception. I mean, I know we're kind of talking about clothes a lot, and that's only one aspect of somebody's identity. But I do feel like as if there is this kind of idea that to be fully Muslim, you have to dress a certain way. So so that an abaya is the correct way to dress. That is the Islamic requirement of modesty.
And I think new Muslims do take that on. They do feel that. That's what they come in. Yes, this is how it's meant to be. and I think so that is more predominant when people first become Muslim.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm and
Yeah.
here I go.
Yes,
I'm really
yes,
going
yeah.
to take this seriously, and some stick
Yeah.
with it and others don't. Depending on what.
I mean, it's not to say that that's incorrect.
No.
I just kind of feel
No.
like as if there is a kind of inclination that is the way you should dress.
Yeah,
that if you
definitely.
are a Muslim and a woman, then you should be wearing an abaya,
Yeah.
and you should be wearing a headscarf in a certain way, and and so therefore, kind of fighting against that a little
Yeah.
bit to be British.
But I think like Catherine just said, it's at the beginning. You just want to be in the right way. You want to be dressed the right way, behave the right way, do the right things, and you look around the community and think, oh, this is the way, and then you realise actually no, there's other things. I mean, for me, going to Turkey was an eye opener.
Yes, for me actually. as
I
well,
think
yes.
Turkey is an amazing place. Girls, boys dress however they dress, but when the adhan goes, they all nip into little mosques, and there's always something in the mosque that means that, if they were wearing jeans, they've got something that they can wear over to make it more comfortable for the prayers. And I just thought, wow,
Yes.
this is what I think Islam is more towards this than,
Yes.
being covered.
But then
hidden.
the percentage of Muslims within Turkey,
Oh, yeah.
obviously that is a predominantly Muslim country, and we are in, the UK,
But for
where
me,
only less than 7%
I
of the
learned a lot from
population
Turkey
is
because they've
Muslim.
only been Muslim as a nation for about 400 years. So they're quite new in relative
Yeah.
terms, and
Yes.
and a lot of Turkish culture is still very much in their how they practice their Islam in various ways. They embraced their Islam, but they didn't lose
They
any
did
of their
get theirs.
Turkish culture.
Yes.
I'd like to think that eventually this is where we'll be in this
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
We are lucky in this country in that everybody seems to accept everybody's differences. I mean, I know we've gone through some difficult times and there's still some
Yes, a bit of a
ups
rocky
and
road.
down at the moment. But, I mean,
But
can...
we are free to practice our religion.
Exactly.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
You have that freedom,
Yes.
like you say. You can dress from head to toe black however you want. You
Yes.
can dress in bright
Yes.
colours. Nobody's going to say, oh, that's outrageous, look at how they are. I don't think that's the case. I think people say, well, it's their choice.
And that's a
we're
very
very-
British thing. Sort of
Very,
live and let
very
live.
British.
Yeah, we have eccentricities, and if people want to live, that's
Yeah.
fine. It's not hurting anybody. Yeah,
And
yes.
that is it. I think British is more often... You don't judge people. You just let them be however they want to be. You don't force your opinions on them. I kind of think conservative in that, you don't, but we're not as, culturally, we're not ones to show big emotions either. I think that's another thing that...
Yeah, it's something about not interfering with somebody, and that also because we're quite reserved.
Yeah.
We just look after ourselves and our immediate family, maybe. That then comes into play.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the first time when I went to visit somebody where there'd been a death, and the women wailing, and I just thought, my gosh, was everybody so close to this person? And it just turned out, well, no, they weren't really close. It was just the way to behave, and if you didn't behave that way, you were seen as not being kind, not being right. It was really odd. I found it very strange. But then you look at the Prophet ﷺ, wasn't there something about women not being allowed to behave like that? That's why they don't generally go to the grave and the janazas. And I thought, well, I'm not surprised if this is how they behave, because I didn't understand that. For me, I thought, well, why can't I go to the funeral? Because obviously you don't sit there and scream and carry on and wail. You keep it in.
Yeah,
That's
like
how
the
you do it.
That's how the
Yeah.
British
So
behave.
that's
Yeah.
a thing that actually is really Islamic for me.
Yes.
And so, it's one of those points where we're like, well, hold on a minute. Actually, I think I'm okay to go if I want to, But, yeah.
Ladies, very interesting discussion. So we're coming up to a break now, and inshallah, after the break, we shall reconvene on our topic of being British Muslims. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
I also have two guests in the studio with me. Assalamu alaikum, Jeanette and Catherine.
Waalaikumsalam.
So before the break, we introduced Luton Revert Group, which is where we're from, and we talked about our topic today, which is being British Muslims.
Yeah.
And as we said before, actually, I'm going to plug our next meeting now while I think of it. One of the reasons we chose this topic is because our next meeting that we're having, which is usually the first Saturday of the month, so that's going to be Saturday the 5th of October, is going to be actually on this topic as well. So we tend to structure our meetings where we have a couple of hours together. 1 hour is usually social time, so that we as a group and as a community can get to know each other. And we usually then invite somebody of knowledge or somebody who can cover a topic that is relevant for new Muslims. This actually is going to be an open event, so it is going to be on Eventbrite, so you can search it on Eventbrite, Being British Muslim. Where we have invited an author, a local author, Dr. Mamnoon Khan, to come in and talk about his particular topic, which is being British Muslim. Yeah. And he has written a book on that topic, so he's going to be covering that subject. So inshallah, that sounds really interesting. I'm really looking forward to hearing what he's got to say. So that's another reason why we chose today's topic, just as a little lead into that. So that will be held here next Saturday on the 5th of October at 5:30 at the Dalla Road Community Centre. So inshallah, please do come along. Family and friends are welcome. We'd love to see you all.
And details will be put on the Facebook.
Details will be on our Luton Revert Group Facebook page, and I usually attach it as well onto the Inspire Radio Facebook page as well.
Definitely.
If I can.
Yeah.
So inshallah, we'd love to see you all. So before the break, we were talking about identity, and we talked a lot about clothing, which is only one aspect of somebody's identity. I actually, in kind of preparation for today's show, looked up an article which was based on an Ipsos Mori poll that was done in 2010. So I know it's not quite up to date, but it's just to paint kind of a picture, really. So this poll was to paint a comprehensive picture of British Muslims. That was the idea of the poll. I actually am not sure how many took part in the poll, unfortunately it doesn't say, but it says that the UK Muslim population was 3 million at 2011. That's when the last census was taken. But the estimate as of 2007, that increased to 4.1 million. So obviously now in 2019, we can expect that's a little bit more again. So roughly about 7% of the population of the UK is Muslim. Almost half are under the age of 24 and 1/3 are under 15, making them the fastest growing group among young Britons. So the interesting thing that I kind of picked out from the lots of statistics that are here is that 85% said they felt, and this is of the Muslim survey, felt that they belonged to Britain. And more than half of those surveys, 55%, said their national identity was important. And interestingly, this is compared to a general population of 44%. So actually, British Muslims are saying that national identity is more important to them than the general population. We kind of had some thoughts about that, didn't we, Catherine?
Yes, we were wondering if one explanation why there's such a high percentage of the Muslims identify as British is because maybe they're asked about it more, and it's more in their consciousness as to people keep asking me who do I identify with, and yes, they've concluded they feel British, but British non-Muslim people are not necessarily asked that sort of question.
It's not on their conscience.
No.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think because, and especially, and I mean, I know this is an older survey, but I think it probably is even more relevant in the current political atmosphere that we have with Brexit, that actually, and also things like what happened with Shamima Begum, where she ran off to join ISIS,
Yes.
and there's been a lot of questions about that, and because the fact that she actually was a British citizen, but she's been stripped of that
Yes.
citizenship, and there's obviously a little bit of kind of backlash on that, and in terms of, well, what does that mean? Because she
Yeah.
was British, but yet she's
Yes.
been stripped, and is that because she's a
Yeah.
brown face? Is that because she's Muslim? And so I think there's a little bit of anxiety there. But yeah, and in terms, obviously, more currently, Brexit, I think that atmosphere means that actually British Muslims kind of are questioning their self in terms of being British.
Yes.
So therefore, it's more on their consciousness. Do you think, Jeanette?
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, I think it's just. It's a difficult one, really, especially in the current climate. I mean, does anybody who's non-Muslim really know what it means to be British anymore?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're
Yes.
right, Catherine. I think being Muslim, you're definitely asked, well, are you really British? Do you think you're British? Do you feel British?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
you've
because
got-
there's this idea out there that you can't be British and Muslim in the
Yeah.
public conscience. I think in the British Muslims' mind, yes, you can.
yeah.
But there's the idea but Britishness is a nationality, and
Yeah.
Muslim is a religion.
Yeah.
But we were also saying how, and this is Scottish nationality and Welsh nationality.
Yes.
They have
Yeah.
quite a different understanding, or I don't know what is it different, because there's Britishness, Scottishness, Welshness, and Englishness, and they
Yeah.
all have different meanings.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yes.
one of the things that we talked about at the start of the show that I kind of introduced as part of the topic was this idea that in Scotland now they actually have an Islamic tartan. So let me just kind of like cover that for you, just to kind of put it in context. So they've introduced this tartan, which is obviously very iconically Scottish, and the design of it goes like this. So the blue is to represent the Scottish flag. Green is to represent the colour of Islam. There's 5 white lines running through the pattern itself to represent the 5 pillars of Islam. 6 gold lines to represent the 6 articles of faith, and a black square to represent the Kaaba.
Amazing.
So, alhamdulillah, it sounds really great. And I remember looking at the article, and they showed various people wearing the different tartans. So there was a
Yeah.
lady wearing a hijab tartan. There was a man actually wearing the traditional kilt.
Yes. Yeah.
Kilt with sporran and the works. And I just thought, wow, that's really nice, actually.
Yes.
That's just such a lovely gesture to kind of say, actually, from a Scottish perspective, we recognise that Muslims are part of our society, and we value them.
Yes.
It's a big difference, isn't it? I don't know if that's the same in England.
No.
I think if somebody, for starters, we don't have a kilt.
No, we don't have a kilt. But what would be the English
that's-
equivalent?
Yes.
What
That's the
could
question.
if you think right? Like, let's say there was a think tank in the British government, and they saw what Scotland have done, and they've seen that the nice kind of warm feeling that's brought about, and they've thought to themselves, okay, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
What actually would they do? Let's have a little bit of a
don't know.
brainstorm here, ladies. What actually would they do?
roses, lions.
What, name a rose after
rose.
Islam?
I'm just thinking of what you'd
thought.
wear. I don't know.
Oh, so you're thinking an article of
Yeah.
clothing?
Well, if you think the Scottish have got the tartan,
Yes.
which is a material that you use for different parts of clothing.
Yes.
I don't know if we don't have anything like that.
We
in
don't.
England.
There's nothing that
No.
says an
Distinctive.
English piece of
Yeah.
clothing, is there?
And even the roses. I mean, for me, it has to be a white rose because I'm from Yorkshire.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you got in Lancashire that want the red rose.
Yeah, there's
it's-
nothing.
No, but
there's
maybe they
English,
could cultivate
English.
a new rose. You know how now they kind of splice species together and they cultivate new
A
roses.
green rose.
So maybe they could make a green rose.
Maybe.
But what would that make?
Yeah.
I mean,
What would you
as-
do
think
with it?
it
What would
was,
you do
yeah.
with this green rose? Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking, why I was thinking of lions and roses is that you could put that on in a textile
yeah,
Yeah.
thing and have
yeah.
it as a. or tablecloths or tea towel. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
What do you-
Well,
Yeah.
do you think Scottish Muslims are actually wearing the tartan? I mean, do you think it's just
I
a kind
think
of
they
like
are. My contact-
gesture, but are they actually
No, I think I
using
heard
it?
just a few years ago. There was a brother who came down from Scotland, told me what they were doing there, and one of the things was, yes, the mosque would have open days,
Yes.
and they'd have hijab trying on days, but it would be all Scottish tartan textiles.
Okay.
That's just one example.
Yes.
That was 4 or 5 years ago when that was happening.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, unfortunately, England really doesn't have anything, even down to the poppy hijab.
Mm.
It caused such a ruckus among some communities,
Yes.
and that was really England trying to. I mean, it was a Muslim lady, I believe, who designed it.
Mm.
But for me, that was England trying to include Muslims in their remembrance.
And we rejected it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of the community did reject
Yes.
it.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it was just a puppet and a hijab.
Mm.
But obviously, there's a lot more for people behind it, and that comes to our discussion earlier.
But do you
regarding
think that maybe,
colonialism.
I mean, because actually within this Ipsos Mori article that I've been reading, there is actually a reference to the poppy in here. So where it says almost 2/3 of Muslims say that they think different religious and ethnic groups should mix more.
Yeah.
A majority of Muslims of all ages wear a poppy on Remembrance Day. And almost 3/4 said they always or sometimes said Christmas cards. So I'm wondering if this kind of backlash to this thing that they did with the poppy is the bad old media wolf again, kind of overplaying. Probably was actually quite a small kind of like little criticism that came from somewhere.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they overplayed
Blew
it
it.
to make it seem like, you can't please these Muslims, can you?
Exactly.
So I'm wondering if it was maybe a little bit of that. Do you think?
I don't know, but I still come back to the thing of, what do we have
That's English.
English?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even Ireland, they've got their own. They've got languages. Welsh,
Yes.
yes.
Gaelic in Scotland, and they've all
Yes.
got something that is unique for them.
Yes.
For their identity.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, so then if we put this question, I mean, obviously, us as reverts, we are English as it happens, the three of
Yeah.
us anyway. So let's take off our Muslim hat, for a minute. Take off our hijabs, lady. Whoop. And think about, just from our English background, what actually does it mean to be English? Because let's take the Islamic part out of it. And what actually does it mean? Let's explore that question. What is it to be English? What does it mean now in 2019?
In 2019, I think it's completely different to me because obviously I'm a little bit older. I got back to when I was younger. To be English is looking after your elders, respect for your elders,
Yeah.
looking after your neighbours,
Yeah.
keeping your troubles indoor.
Yeah.
Didn't share things, any problems.
I think also we've got the NHS.
Yes.
It's uniquely British.
Yes.
And highly
Very
valued.
uniquely.
And sort of slightly linked to that is because I've lived abroad in Europe a little bit, and I think in England, in Britain, there's a very strong tradition of doing voluntary work
Yeah.
in the community, and that's a very strong tradition. It's also very Islamic.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Because one of the things that actually has just sprung to my mind is it's such a dichotomy to the Islam as well, is dogs.
Yes.
Man's best friend, English best friend, is dogs. And, unfortunately, there is this thing, I mean, there's a pushback from the Muslim community on having dogs within the home. So, we can't even really bridge the gap there, can we?
But there's difference of opinions even on
and
that.
I think it needs. I think it has. A lot of Muslims I know, they've got a pathological fear of dogs.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
totally
Yeah.
irrational.
Yes.
But there are differences of opinion. But I've recently been on holiday to the seaside. Every day, people walking up and down with the dogs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Healthy, fit, keeps you.
Yeah.
It's companionship.
Yes.
It's a positive thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said to my husband, when we're old and it's just us, I'd like to have a little dog because I think it's the one thing that would keep us active. because you'll
Yeah.
take care of them. You go out for the walks. I think, and I don't see. I mean, obviously there's evidence out there, but I just think an animal that you take care of how can that be un-Islamic?
Well, we know that there is the hadith about caring for all living things.
Yeah.
So therefore, and there's reward in looking
Yeah.
after anything that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's
Yes.
creation.
Yeah.
So, but then again, again, it might be this kind of somehow a cultural kind of overblowing of this whole dog thing.
I mean, it was explained to me once many years ago that actually, the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was something said about not having black dogs, and it was to do with a disease that they were carrying at the time, and so it was a protection not to have black dogs specifically, not no dogs full stop. But you see, I think that's been lost over time.
Yeah.
And like word of mouth, Chinese whispers, it gets changed slightly. So dogs are a no-no, full stop. But I still think, personally, my own personal view is, you have an area in your house where you do your prayers.
Yes, and you just keep that clean.
That's it.
Yeah.
You don't have the dog there or anything else. And that is just my own view. And I cannot see that being wrong. I still think, like you said, looking after all of Allah's creations.
Yeah.
But,
The British love their gardens and gardens.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's why I thought maybe the rose, but it's like you said, but what would we do with the rose?
Yeah.
It would be a nice gesture, I suppose. But realistically, what would we do with that rose? Plant it in our gardens?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, I've got a Muslim garden in the UK full of roses.
I think that's another thing. English, talking about gardens, they love their gardens, they make them pretty. I think for a lot of people, it's Muslims, it's a practical thing. Yeah, you have a garden,
growing the vegetables.
you grow your spinach, and your coriander, things like this, which is still a part of all, even you go back a few years, British culture. That's something you do, and then it's coming back. Is all that kind of
because
things.
it's healthier, it's organic,
and that's also Islamic.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think people realise.
Well, I think that the British do a lot of things they don't realise. Oh, actually, that's very Islamic.
As well.
Yeah.
That's a British thing, and
Yes.
there's a lot to learn from that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, communal sharing. What else? Yeah.
It's I do think the English culture has changed a lot over the years, and it's not as family orientated as it used to be.
And
but I think changes are beginning to happen for some.
And I think that's, economic pressures. People move away from the family, they go and work in a different town or a different country even. We're a global village now. We're no longer idyllic sort of rural communities or even town streets.
It doesn't matter where you are now. It's easy to keep in touch.
No.
But it's not the same as.
So hence we need to be.
Close.
Our neighbours are so important, and our neighbours may or may not be Muslim, and so
I've got the most wonderful neighbours. Alhamdulillah, I moved to Luton and I got fantastic neighbours. My husband would like to move to a bigger house, but I don't want to because I've got amazing neighbours.
Yeah.
I was telling you earlier.
Yeah.
Last week it was their 60th wedding anniversary, and they invited us to go along, and so we did.
Yeah.
I was a bit nervous, like I've never done one before. I don't know what's expected, because let's face it, in the English culture, there's not many people that get to 60 years of marriage now. But the lovely couple next door, and there was a couple of the neighbours all went, and we all sat together, and it was just lovely getting to know each other a bit better. We knew each other well. I mean, I'm lucky in that we still talk to each other over the fence.
Yes.
But it doesn't happen as much as it used to. Where I lived in Bradford, we didn't. My neighbours, I lived there for 16 years, and I knew them, but I didn't know them, if that makes sense. That's something.
And that's a dawah as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being together with people around you.
Yeah, for me, that is an important point, Catherine. Is that for me, I don't want to kind of withdraw into a community which is isolating itself and, you know, saying, right, we're Muslims and we do this way, and pushing out everyone else, because for me, then where's the dawah?
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
very
for me,
dry.
you know, for me that is dawah. You know, for me, just being me, showing that I can be a British person who's white skinned and being Muslim, you know, for me that in itself to be seen
yes.
is part of my dawah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the Britishness English side of it is that they're generally quite accepting of you being dressing different. Maybe, I mean, I find it easier to say within an English thing to say, I need to go and do my prayer. Is that all right? Well, yeah, no problem. You know, just let us. Do you need anything? And they're really, really accommodating. But so other times I'll get, and it's amongst Muslims, unfortunately, they'll say, well, you've got time yet. It's not done, you know, Asr isn't until such and such time. And I'm like, well, no,
Yeah.
I want to go and do it now. And, you know, the school I work in, there's one other Muslim lady, but she's a dinner lady, but I'm the only Muslim member of staff. But everybody knows when it's my prayer time. Nobody interrupts me. In fact, I've had comments like, you know, you got your new well-being and mindfulness.
Oh, yes.
How this is just an amazing tool that we already do.
Wow.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, it's funny you pointed that out, because my children have said the same thing. They said, at school, Mum, we have to do meditation
Yeah.
and all this kind, and they're like, and they just don't get it. They're like, well, you know, we pray 5 times a day. You know, that we're already getting calm and, you know,
It's
collected
time out.
and
Yeah.
time out.
Yeah.
So we don't need this meditation malarkey. So, you know, I'm wondering then, does it actually, like, if we're saying that there isn't anything that really identifies so much as being British anymore, does it really matter? Do we need to feel British?
I think we do, because we don't want to feel, you know,
I think we
Turkish
do.
or
That's right.
anything else that
We
might
don't want to be
feeling close.
identified as Asian or
No.
Arab. We are English.
Mm.
I want to be known as English. British, English. English, I think, is very different to British.
Mm.
But I want to be known as this. I like to say to people, you know, when you have the surveys where you have to tick white, other, and all this and that.
Yes.
I really want to write down saying I'm English but Muslim. I really
Yeah.
want to put it on there, but there's nothing there for that. You
Yeah.
know, because I do think that's important to me.
So do you think then, because one of the statistics is that, this is one of the things that Brother Mamnon explores in his book, is that he's said that the statistic is that 50% of the Muslim population now in the UK are born here.
Mm.
So, I mean, obviously for us three as new Muslims, we come from an English background. Do you think that's still relevant then, as just as much for the born Muslims here in the UK? That
I think born Muslims here in the UK have a different kind of struggle.
Yeah.
okay.
I think when they're outside at school, college, university or work, it's a completely different setup. They can be whoever they want to be and they know it's fine.
Yeah.
But often when they go home, it's very traditional.
Because
Yes.
their parents or
And
grandparents are
That's right.
born abroad.
Yeah.
That's
It's a
um,
different pressure, different identity.
Do you think that will stay? You know, as this generation grows up and has their own
No.
children, do
I
you
think it will change.
I don't know. I'm just because I 30 years ago I became Muslim and I was young then, and the young Muslims, heritage Muslims around me saying, "Inshallah, don't worry, sister. We're the young generation. Everything will be changing, and it's still the same in the heritage Muslim population. I feel are still feeling the pressures of inherited." From their culture.
Mm.
I think the change will come around, but I think it'll be through our children.
Mm.
I think our children will be the ones who'll say, well, actually, yeah, that's my cultural on that side, that's my mum's
it's-
side, my dad's side, but in Islam.
I don't know, if we say from the 50s, this really
Mm.
started, so it's 70 years. I think it might be 200 years or something going back, because we had back in, I don't know, 1600 and something, a lot of French Protestants came over, thousands and thousands, and it was maybe 100 or so years before they were fully British.
Well, ladies, I think unfortunately we're coming to a close. I think this is a topic where we could just talk on and on and on. But, you know, unfortunately we are limited to our time on this show. So
I think I'd like to say, if anybody's got any comments on anything that we've said, put it on our Facebook page.
Oh, please do. Yeah, we always invite, you know, people to
Mm.
participate and give your feedback, please. And do get in touch with us. And like I said, we are having our next, Luton Revert Group are having their next meeting on the 5th of October. And that's on Saturday at 5:30
And
at
also,
Dalla Road.
if we've got a few minutes, a lot of reverts are actually European.
Yes.
A lot in our group, or we're in
Yes.
contact with. They're from every country in Europe, just about.
Yeah, we're a diverse
That's
group.
another debate. That's
Yes.
It is another day. But please come along on the 5th
Yes.
and
we'd love
find
to
out
see you.
more about the identity.
Yes,
British
please
Muslims.
do. Please do. All right, then, ladies, we're going to draw a close now. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.